Started like 10 after.
Yeah, like 10 minutes ago. Ladies and gentlemen, variations thereof, welcome to the Selectives Lorecast, a casual Elder Scrolls podcast. What are we talking about today? Oh, that's right.
Disease.
Kind of diseases. Kind of the flu, kind of the shit that you talk about during COVID. Like, it's the only thing we talk about. It's the only thing that's happening right now.
This is how we get the views, my friend.
My name is Rotten Deadite, and with me today are people who were not told what order to go in, as usual.
I'll go first. My name is Felix, also known as Banohana Masaishi on Discord and on Reddit.
I am James, also known as Aramithius, pretty much everywhere.
And I'm Andrew, also known as the White Guar, also pretty much everywhere.
That's also pretty much everywhere. And if you find me elsewhere as something other than Rotten Deadite, you haven't found me, because that ain't me.
Okay, then.
So,
It just works.
Barring, like, you know, my mouse is on Felix. Hi, Felix. My mouse is over you. All right.
Oh,
Not anymore.
okay.
Thank you, Captain. Good job. Barring, like, any sort of, like, you know, relatively minor infections, there are, to the best of my knowledge, two major disease outbreaks in Tamrielic history. In order, would be the Knahaten Flu, Knahaten Flu, and the Thracian Plague. We kind of talked a little bit about the Thracian Plague when we did our Slowcast some months ago.
I don't think we ever did a slowed cast.
Well, it kind of happened in...
It was-
They got talked about a lot in the Somerset cast.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so what we've got now is we're just going to kind of try to talk about, like, diseases in general. And before we kick this off, I want to kind of cover the fundamentals about health in Tamriel, because there's still a lot of debate among fans on exactly how health works in Tamriel, about considering the fact that, I mean, if you... Okay, so once again, I'm going to remind everybody, we do this every couple of casts. I have to bring this up. One of the original sort of meta pitches for the Elder Scrolls games was that they were about a real place, a real dimension, a real reality that the developers were reading about from actual Elder Scrolls that they had in their basement. And then they were interpreting those events into a video game for the investors who were Daedric Princes. And as a sort of a sacrifice for, you know, converting the world of Tamriel, which works on magic and doesn't have things like physics and biology, they would make certain sacrifices for the masses so that the people, the customer, could understand what was going on. And among those sacrifices were things like explaining stuff like health potions and so on, which we don't have any evidence to suggest that health potions are a mechanic purely of the games and do not exist in the Elder Scrolls universe. So we have to assume, therefore, that it is possible to get stabbed in the gut by somebody and then drink something out of a flask, and then all that wound just heals back almost instantaneously or very quickly, depending on which game you're playing. So obviously a lot of fans see this happen, and because we're Elder Scrolls fans, we read way too much into absolutely everything. So the first question that starts to come to mind is, do healing potions also counteract cellular deterioration like you would get for, you know, age and organ failure and et cetera, et cetera? Do they heal back severed limbs? It is not in the scope of this cast to discuss this, but we have, partially because there's a lot of conflicting information on both ends.
Yes.
So what we do need to consider is that we have what appear to be definite records of communicable diseases in the Elder Scrolls universe. So we have to assume that diseases in some way, shape, or form work or operate in a similar way to the way that they do in real life. If that's the case, my question to you guys is this. Can you think of any way that diseases could work in the Elder Scrolls universe, or any fictional universe for that matter, that doesn't involve microorganisms?
Corpus.
Corpus.
Great example, and in fact, actually, that dawned on me. We're actually going to have to talk about corpus disease as well.
Yes, we are. Absolutely, we are.
I wish I'd thought of that, because I was thinking about that before the cast, and I don't know why I didn't mention it in the intro.
Although is corpus actually does it actually fit our categories, because it's not communicable?
It's communicable from Dagoth to everybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's as I always saw Corpus as a I guess how conspiracy theorists see 5G right now. it's transmitting and giving everybody cancer. And so in that way, it's transferring from one source to others, and in that way is communicable. I mean, it's not. I mean, I don't think. I mean, I was always, when I played Morrowind when I was younger, I was always terrified to catch Corpus from the Corpus beasts. I don't know if it's
I
actually
remember
possible.
that. Yeah.
I don't know
think
that's
it is.
actually possible.
No, I don't think it is.
Because catching Corpus is part of the main storyline when you fight Dagoth Gares.
Yeah.
And he just gives it to you.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
It doesn't help that they kind of confused Corpus and blight diseases in general, which you can.
Yeah. I mean, it seemed to me that the two were at least separate
Similar,
to a point. Like, you know, blight diseases are just really bad diseases.
In which case, because the blight diseases were still caused by Red Mountain to a degree, because the blight was their basic thing. So can we assume to some degree that that diseases, particularly if we take the conspiracy theorists' thoughts that the Knahaten Flu was created by an Argonian shaman, that it's some way of disrupting or altering magicka within a being rather than microorganisms?
Yeah.
Well, that's a really good that's a really good example. If you consider real life diseases to be the malfunctioning of the body malfunctions of the body caused by the invasion of a entity of an organism, then you could easily consider diseases in the Elder Scrolls universe to be malfunctioning of the magical structure that that creates an organism, as a human being or otherwise. Yeah.
So this was actually something that I really did a bunch of research into. And to answer your question, Chris, of if it's possible to explain disease in a way that doesn't involve microbes, the answer is emphatically 100% yes, in part because of what James was pointing out with the not sure if the Knahaten Flu, however you want to pronounce it, was created by an Argonian shaman. There's also the fact that the Slode created the Thracian plague, and there are some people who also suggest that Periite, who I'm sure we'll talk about a fair bit this stream, was actually responsible for helping them create that. Additionally, Ciribane, using a magical ring, was able to cure a lot of people who had been infected with the Thracian plague throughout like that general area. So Somerset Isles, Valenwood, Colovia, Southern Hammerfell, etc. Additionally, there are 3 ways to cure disease. Well, I guess kind of 4, which I'll get to because I just found it very funny from my experiences. But basically, there's 3 main ways of curing diseases: drinking a potion of cure disease, praying at an altar or a shrine to have your diseases carried away by divine essence, which again reinforces this theory, or you cast a spell called Cure Disease, which is from the Restoration School of Magic.
Right.
So
which is a legitimate school of magic.
Yeah, I never said it wasn't. Don't attack the messenger. I'm just saying. I'm just saying that this just lends further credence to that theory of, it's absolutely possible to have disease as a sort of, the curse, the blight of the land upon ye, without it being, it's actually just microbes. It's like, a little bacteria in the ash of Red Mountain. Like, So there is that, but also in Oblivion, the by far cheapest, most effective way of curing disease was eating a shit ton of mandrake root. It's everywhere. You find it. It's just like, yeah, here, it's cheap. It grows everywhere. Oh no, I'm sick. Home. I've been fighting in a swamp for a day. Home. Okay, I'm fine now. Instead of having to go to a way shrine, pay money, buff up your alchemy, you didn't have to do any of that. You could just consume mandrake root and you'd get better. And by also doing that, by consuming it, it was boosting your alchemy anyway. So for me, that was one of my cheats of Oblivion. Is, oh no, I'm sick. Eat a mandrake root. It works.
That's kind of. I'm assuming they're kind of taking real world mandrake root as the kind of the sole source of it. I can't remember what the mandrake root from Oblivion actually looked like, but they kind of
it looked similar to a lotus flower actually, but like kind of purplish.
It was more the root that's the thing, because the reason that mandrake root in this world was considered mystical, or part of it anyway, was that they associated it with looking like a child in the womb, sort of thing. So it was kind of you were consuming some sort of fairy child or something. I'm just wondering if there was a similar justification in the Elder Scrolls anywhere.
Not that I've heard, but I'm assuming they expected us, because we're all nerds, to make that connection.
Yeah.
I just think of Harry Potter.
Yeah.
that too, yeah. I remember thinking that in Oblivion.
Yeah, Neville faints.
Oh God, what is wrong with us? Yeah.
Well, no, Harry Potter was drawing on that older.
And yet, correct me if I'm wrong, but we all have, like, you guys are all married or have girlfriends or something, right?
Yep,
so you see
married,
kids,
yep.
You can be a nerd and still find love and happiness. It's possible.
Yeah.
I would argue it's because of my nerdiness.
Yeah,
seriously.
Same. I mean, that's how I got the current lady friend I'm with. It's like, hi, I'm a huge nerd. She's like, cool.
Yeah. But
so
my question in kind of the disease analog with magic and so on is, how do you get the transmission is the thing, because the Knahaten Flu is very explicitly the containment stuff. It almost sounds like cholera or the Black Death, and how they're containing it, as in kind of burning everyone's clothes and leaving people on board ships. So there's a degree of something close to natural disease communication. If diseases magic are based, how does that work? Does that mean that people emanate magicka?
You can, if you consider, I'll put it to you this way: if you consider diseases to be related magically in the school of magicka, in theory, basically to curses, then it's not. It doesn't go on beyond, like, curses themselves are intelligent spells. You can cast a curse on a thing, and it will infect people who come in contact with it. You can cast a curse on someone who performs a task. And if you remove this, phylactery from my tomb, then you will be cursed for 1,000, etc., etc. That's an intelligent spell. That's a spell that has a logic to it. So the idea of a disease just being effectively a smart and belligerent curse kind of makes a lot of sense to me. It's a magical spell that the curse properties of which are spread to people who are nearby, or spread by rat bites, or spread on fleas or something.
I'm thinking more along the lines of it being about an aura of magicka. Because I mean, if we go into Middle Eastern, or not Middle Eastern, but Eastern philosophy, and everyone's got an aura and that kind of thing. I mean, when you take into account like detect life spells, and that kind of thing, I mean, maybe that's what we're seeing is that aura of magicka. And so, I mean, maybe getting too close to the aura of someone who is tainted with a disease, it can transfer into your aura. And so now it's, kind of like, if you have, a drop of red water and a drop of regular water, and you let them touch, like some of that red's going to transfer into that other bubble, Is that you look confused? Does that make sense?
No, I thought we were going to start talking about, new age treatments or something.
No.
Well, okay.
Water has a
We
memory,
can
and it
if
can.
you want, because I have a lot of notes
No.
here. But to Andrew's point about transferring an aura, these sort of intelligent spells can also very much be transferred by someone who's willing to take on the curse, like we see during the trials of the Crusader in Oblivion. Remember, where it's like that person who like their ancestor had like struck down like a homeless person or something, and
then didn't they kill a beggar? Wasn't that what it was?
Yeah, it was something like that, and so all their descendants were cursed, and you can take on that curse. So that can be another form of, I guess, unofficial contract of spreading disease. And as we've also seen, whether like I think we can't just look at this in purely terms of magicka as the source of all forms of disease and everything. It could also be, microbial. We have lots of fungus and things. Creatures have always carried diseases. So I think there's some disease carried by skeevers, and in some mission in ESO, if you like, you'll catch this disease while you kill off a bunch of rats. It's like, oh, you've been infected by such and such thing, which happens if you fight rats for too long. And it's like, okay, you fight bears in the wilderness in Skyrim, you contract bone break fever. So there can definitely be some microbes. It can also be a magicka thing. In terms of trying to hybridize these two, we could probably look at our actual in real life historical evidence of the earliest concept of the ether, and how people thought that was going to be the medium that carried magicka and curses and pathogens and energy, and for like it was actually the ether that caused flames to rise up and burn, right? So again, lack of understanding, but that was a very popular theory for centuries of, that's how all this stuff happens. So we could have a version of that, especially if we think in terms of the sun in the Elder Scrolls world is basically the big giant fuck you hole Magnus Tor in the sky. And that allows, I think it's magicka to enter the world or something like that.
Yeah, it comes from
that. Magicka is just the bits of Magnus that were left behind, depending on who you are.
Yeah, so that can be its own sort of, see, because of the sunlight, that's how these things are spreading, which is why we need the special school of restoration magic to make the people better again. And also, here, eat this because it's good for you, right? It's kind of like how kale is healthy for you, but that doesn't mean it's going to cure cancer, right? Like,
no. I mean, I always saw magicka as the barest energy in the Elder Scrolls. I mean, it's I've talked a lot about souls, and I missed the Souls cast a few weeks ago. I mean, I always saw that the animus is basically refined or concentrated magicka, and that allows for the animation of all things that are animate, dogs and people and rats and whatever. And so and so when we enchant things, we're using that energy to imbue that concentrated magicka into an item, which allows us to create whatever effects we want. And so the idea that magicka comes from the sun, and it operates kind of like it does in real life. Sunlight gets absorbed by plants. The plants photosynthesize. That they have that energy. Animals eat those plants. They get that
like
energy.
Magicka energy.
So I mean, same kind of thing. But I mean, when talking about diseases, I mean that would be the praxis by which those diseases work also. So the magicka isn't necessarily good or bad. I mean, you can use electricity to light your home, or you can use it to fry someone's brain in an electric chair. I mean, there's no real necessary morality to it. It just is. It's how you use it that matters.
Right on.
Yeah. I do want to bring up Doc's contribution from chat.
Me too. I was just about to. Yeah, yeah, it was really
good.
Because
I was kind of having this kind of going through a similar parallel thought process. That kind of if I was kind of thinking back to the whole curses as intelligent spells and so on. Are we then going to say that the common diseases are just really, really old curses that have kind of exceeded their original programming?
They're literally viruses.
Yeah, they're literally some sort of virus, if you're going to think about it that way. But also in that, I was thinking that if that's the case, then you kind of need some sort of system for doing that, or some place for those things to originate from. But and Doc's thing was saying that if Periite is the master of diseases and the lower orders of oblivion, you can possibly start attributing diseases to Daedra.
Yeah.
Like maybe diseases are Periite's Daedric servants.
Yeah. Maybe instead of them being curses, maybe diseases are closer to the summoning schools. You know.
Not gonna lie, in my head, as soon as I said that, I mentioned Periite and disease. I just got this image in my head of LJ just busy somewhere, and then it just like suddenly drops everything he's doing, and I look at somebody and says, "Someone's wrong on the internet." Like, I don't know, but.
Someone somewhere saying something stupid about Periite. I really like the idea of. I think that's probably one of my favorite things that I've heard so far. That the idea that that diseases are sort of like very malicious and simplistic spirits. Because it makes it fits in with like the semi-intelligent nature of diseases, that they spread only under certain conditions, so it attributes an intelligence to them.
So I wonder, would that make them Elnafey?
No. I
what?
Kind of expand on your point.
No more than if Daedra were Elnafey or Daedroths, I should say. Is a scamp Elnafey?
Going to run with the idea that that it's Daedric just for a second. That kind of ties back to what you were saying, Andrew, about souls and the like, because Daedric Animus is, or they just have Animus, but there's also, if you think about what the towers are supposed to do with chaotic creatia, they kind of channel and refine creatia into something usable. So if you get exposure to Oblivion creatia, then you're going to have mutational effects, if you like. So that's kind of my thinking, that these interactions of these lesser Daedra could potentially be the cause of disease, simply because Mundus isn't built to cope with that sort of raw creation to that degree.
It would explain why Daedric shrines cure diseases as well, because it's an Daedric versus Daedric energy.
Yeah.
The towers. The towers are responsible for keeping us in a dreamlike state and avoiding us from seeing the truth. Wake up, sheeple.
Yeah. Yeah, those 5G towers.
I mean, it's called Adamantine Tower, right? So.
It look kind of like something like this, maybe.
But that would also explain why Periite is down to ordering the lower orders of oblivion and disease, because they could also be one and the same thing. If you're talking about some of the most inconsequential Daedra, so to speak, they don't really have enough of a presence of their own apart from their impact.
Instead of microbes and like bacteriophages, it's just tiny little Dromora inside your bloodstream going.
like that one scene in Army of Darkness.
Yes.
Okay, so all of those kind of children things, those children shows that showed all the antibodies and everything else as kind of soldiers and whatever.
Yeah, those are Dromora
happening inside
That's
everyone.
That's literal. Yeah, it's actually happening. Yeah. So let's stray a little bit into specifics here. So I'm looking at the UESP entry for the Knahaten Flu, which is, by the way, a really well-written article. I was particularly impressed by how they made a connection between the Knahaten Flu and the beginning of the Seven Banners War, the Three Banners War, excuse me, which is really smart. Yeah, because it killed off just the right guy so that what's his name, King Emmerich could then ascend to the throne and make the decisions that he made to, yeah. So the idea that the Knahaten Flu was caused by the hist. Excuse me, I've been playing a lot of Control. It makes a lot of sense in the respect that I don't know if it makes a lot of sense, but I like the tone of it. I like the theory because I like the idea of the hist attacking Tamriel indirectly. Because I mean, the hist interacts very indirectly with everything except Argonians. So the idea that the hist would attack using something like a disease makes a lot of it makes a lot of sense to me. It fits the idiom, I suppose you could say.
Yeah. I just did want to clarify though that the Argonians do get the Knahaten Flu, but it's much milder.
Yeah.
They call it something else, and in one of the Loremasters archives, one of them literally says like it's such a shame that you suffer so much from this blah 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 condition. And it just sounds so much.
Because frankly, it's just a mild inconvenience to us. We're so sorry.
Okay, but on that note, that actually brings it to something that I did want to talk about this cast, which is why and how are Argonians, Bosmer, vampires, and werewolves naturally resistant to disease?
For vampires and werewolves, I'd say that's just a matter of game mechanics.
Like, could we not also, get real nice and nerdy with it and say something about like
sure, but
Daedra?
That's exactly where I was going to go with that. Yeah.
Yeah, because from the developer's perspective, it's a lot easier to
Redguards too.
Okay, well, this
Redguards have like 75% disease resist, whereas Argonians and Bosmer have like.
Well, I think Redguards have a higher poison resistance than.
Okay, right. That's
disease resistance. Anyway,
because poison is for women.
What the fuck?
No, that's literally one of the reasons that's made with regards to why Redguards have a higher poison resistance is because poison in some obscure text is referred to as a tool of noble women or like spurned women or something like that.
Oh, okay.
And so there's this, I know, right? It's kind of dumb, but anyway, it's basically kind of inferring that there's a higher poison resistance because if you're to die in any way, it should be honorably with a sword in your hand or something like that, right? That's what I think they're trying to infer. It's just said in a really dumb way.
Like clear alcohol is for rich women on diets. Yeah.
Well, but anyway, so
yeah.
So what I was saying is say the developers are like, okay, well, our player character is a vampire. We don't really have a way for the vampirism to handle lycanthropy as well. So let's just add an immunity to diseases, call it done and over with.
Well, also lycanthropy and vampirism are both spread like diseases.
Yeah.
So the idea is that it doesn't make you immune to disease. It's just that the disease that you have is so ridiculously powerful that it expels other diseases.
Yeah.
That could be going to go along with the Daedric route.
Exactly. Yeah.
Then you're already attuning yourself to a Daedra.
Your territory has been claimed, boy.
Yeah, which means that that further Daedric influence doesn't have bad effects on you. It grants immunity because you're already down the rabbit hole, and kind of got one foot in Mundus and 1 foot in Oblivion, which is enough to inoculate you against further Daedric influence.
I can see that, yeah. But then, how does that bring us back to the other part of that question, which is why and how are Argonians and Bosmer so disease resistant? Then is that like their attempt at because they're in tropical environments?
It could be.
Yeah, I think for Argonians the reasoning was that they live in the Black Marsh and there's so many diseases there anyway that they're just naturally.
Also they're aliens. So.
Yes. Well, that too. But
yeah, they're literal aliens.
I'm pretty sure in the old booklet you get in Morrowind. Hold on, I happen to have one right here. I'm pretty sure. Hey, look at that for Xbox. I'm pretty sure it says that because. Oh yeah, no, I wanted to play it on my 360. Let's see. They're well suited for treacherous swamps, their homeland, and have developed natural immunities to the diseases and poisons that have doomed many would-be explorers of the region. Wow,
okay, so it's just because they live in Black Marsh, they've built stuff up.
Yeah, that's according to the game's manual.
Sadly, I am not Jonathan, so my Bosmer lore is severely lacking. But for the Bosmer, then, does their disease resistance have something to do with the Wild Hunt / the Green Pact of, hey, don't fuck with the forest won't fuck with you?
Yeah, that's kind of my thought, that the Green Pact keeps them somewhat protected. So it's Ifray saying, no, don't fuck with my homies. They're cool. They ain't gonna eat you, so don't eat them.
Yeah,
or something along those lines. I don't know.
If you've got a protection of the protection of an earth bone, then that's probably going to do wonders for kind of aligning you with Mundus to the point where anything else. So sorry, I'm now just assuming that diseases are Daedra or Daedric just by default now.
I know, right? It's
so
stuck
much.
now.
Yeah, it explains so much.
This is good. This is why we do the thing.
Yeah. Well, see, I wonder if, because I know in ESO we find instances of Bosmer who have kind of abandoned the Green Pact. And there's one who talks about, I even ate a salad, and like it's this kind of thing. I wonder if those Bosmer who choose to turn away from the Green Pact, I wonder if they suddenly become susceptible to this. I mean, there's no real answer to that.
Yeah, I was going to say we don't have any examples of that, do we?
Yeah, I mean, but it's kind of
time to go perform some experiments on Bosmer. Be right back.
Although I'm just trying to think, there was that sort of underclass of people who have kind of been pushed out because they don't follow the Green Pact, or something like that. Or not? Or am I thinking Somerset?
Well, I know
there was definitely an underclass in Somerset, but that surprises no one.
I'm gonna pull up the Green Pact here and see if there are.
I'm sure I remember hearing somewhere that
Redguard just had poison resist.
That the ooze was almost a place where people just went when they were expelled.
There's in the notes here it says the sect of Bosmer, known to the others as the Oathbreakers, refused to agree to the Green Pact in ancient.
There we go.
But this is ancient times. So this is a group of Bosmer who, when the pact was made, said nah. They were subdued. They were subdued and buried in ooze.
Yep.
Okay. And
I was going to say that if they've got a lot of kind of fetid imagery and just disease-ridden and that sort of thing, that would enhance that kind of interpretation. I mean, it doesn't give it anything definite, but it kind of lends credence to the idea that the Green Pact makes you healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, which I don't think anybody buys.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sitting here thinking of like the carnivore diet, and I'm like, yeah, that was a fad. That shit didn't work.
Well,
actually,
special tofu meat and Valen would.
Oh, that. Yeah. So, okay, so symptoms and transmission, symptoms and treatment of the Knahaten Flu. It was literally a flu, like what I'm reading about. The worst of the symptoms could be alleviated by sorghum tea and chicken broth. Aww, you guys, chicken noodle soup, man.
I had some pork bone broth the other day.
Just to bring it back to.
Oh, yeah, I saw a mud crab the other day.
Yeah, to bring it back to the
hideous creatures
situation. The onset of symptoms, as they describe it, and the as you kind of die about 48 hours after developing the symptoms.
Hella fast. Yeah.
Yeah. So then there kind of has to be a good amount of time where you're infectious but asymptomatic.
Oh, it says here, how the disease spread is not definitively known. One source claims it was airborne, while another claims it was spread through physical contact with the victim's particular rash, while another claims that it was spread by 5G towers. The latter theory is supported by reports that infected people who covered their rashes with clothing and bandages were less contagious, or went out and bought really kitschy face masks off of Redbubble. By the way, speaking of Redbubble, Restless League on Redbubble now has
socks and masks.
They have socks and masks now. You can literally get a mask with the a Lorcanic scarab on it, which is pretty dope.
Nice. Those Guar socks are calling my name.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, what is it, that swamp jelly who's washing his hands is just about the cutest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life.
Man, like, I definitely need that mask with the scarab beetle. Mm-hmm. I need that in my life now.
Yep. Yeah, I got that on order, and I got another one with the I got a JoJo meme one that I couldn't pass up.
Oh yeah, I'm on season 3 of JoJo now. And completely
don't you fucking derail me, dude. It doesn't take much work.
Okay, sorry. To get us a bit back on topic then.
Yeah. So they actually mention in the article, in the UESP article, that the reaction to Knahaten Flu was very much like the spread of other flus in real life, in which case they cordoned off areas that were infected. They refused to let people off of boats who had the infection, to disastrous results. And I mean, reading stuff like this it's interesting to see, when the Elder Scrolls universe patent goes after, some of the tragedies of real life. I find it very interesting that nobody in the writing team at ZeniMax Online ever thought up the idea that there would be people who didn't think the Knahaten Flu existed. Nobody on the writing team thought of that.
It's a hoax to limit my rights to travel up the Nibene Basin.
Exactly. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, so of all the ridiculous shit that the writers came up with at ZeniMax Online, none of them were imaginative enough to think that people could be that fucking stupid.
What is it they say? Truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean,
so, but that actually got me thinking. Like there was an article I was reading about people who don't immunize their children, and one of the reasons why people were speculating this might be the case is because it's been so long since we've had a major disease outbreak in the United States that the people don't remember things like the terrors of polio and other stuff. So they don't.
Tuberculosis, measles.
Yeah, exactly. And it made me sort of think, and this is kind of something that I think that listeners and viewers might want to experiment with if you're doing some world building in Elder Scrolls, is what events happened at certain periods during games. Like, for example, during Skyrim, if you think back like 400 or 500 years, what catastrophic events or similar happened that that's gotten fuzzy in people's memories that they might start reacting in a weird way to, Like, for example, the Dwemer. How long after the Dwemer disappeared do you think it took for people in Tamriel to start going, oh, the Dwemer never existed in the first place, or the Dwemer existed and they were really great and they were killed by or some other ridiculous conspiracy theory? Yeah, Well, I think people forgot about the Falmer altogether, right? I mean, when you find the Falmer, I think
they became boogeymen and pixies.
Oh, that's right. That's what it was. Yep. Thanks. Right. So, that's true. It did happen with the Falmer. That's right. People don't remember what happened to the Falmer because they weren't around back then. So, or people who were around during the Falmer aren't now. So, in Skyrim they became like you said, like the boogeymen, like pixies or something. And
I'm wondering if people would look at like the Oblivion Crisis and go,
yeah,
right. Yeah, right. Daedric fuel can't melt White Gold Tower. Yeah.
Because I mean, it doesn't sound like a long time in the Elder Scrolls, but it's 200 years. 200 years ago, we were having the Civil War.
Right, exactly.
That's a good long time.
The example I keep coming up with is I just ask people, well, did George Washington have wooden teeth or not?
Yeah.
And
yeah, I remember you
people,
asking me that, and I knew the
inevitably they're sitting there thinking, wait, did he? I don't remember. And I'm like, that was the first president of the United States, and you don't know whether or not he had wooden teeth or not. That's kind of fucking huge. And it's because it was so long ago that things fade in memory, and you just don't, and did he or did he not chop down a cherry tree? I mean, of course he fucking didn't. But I mean, but for a minute there, you go, wait.
Which, as I happen to know the answer. He had a collection. He had dentures and implants that were made from a variety of human teeth, walrus ivory, and there were some wooden ones in there as well. He didn't have like a set of wooden.
Yeah, it wasn't literally wooden.
Would also, I would also like to sort of expand on that, in that it can also be not just not simply due to a kind of cultural memory loss, which is possible. It also has to do with narratives that are set by subsequent groups or people in power structures. So, case in point, in America, you have the idea of the lost cause in the South, right? Here in Canada, it's not really talked about. But what's not really mentioned is here we really tend to just make what happens before Confederation, which is when Canada became a self-governing nation, as like a little footnote of, some things happen here, but you only really need to know the bullet points. And then we got Canada, and then we focus on stuff. What's left out is the century of serious conflict and bloodshed with the French and with the natives. Like a century of straight conflict. And yet our history is painted as, we're very peaceful, very fine. We worked with people. Here's examples where we worked well with natives and other groups. So, there wasn't like 5 different wars in Acadia over a 60-year period, including a civil war.
Yeah.
Rebellions before Canada was a thing that led to the reason why we have government in the first place. Don't worry about that.
It's fine. Yeah, Oscar in chat is pointing out an interesting thing. What about the left-handed elves? I mean, ZeniMax Online would suggest that they were the
Maormer?
Maormer, yeah, thank you. Wow. Maormer, yeah. And
Mao.
And Mao. And
Chairman Maormer.
Yes.
And that they weren't called the left-handed elves at all. But the idea that maybe the Red Guard, the cultural memory, just sort of twisted them into the left-handed elves, as a either by accident or as an attempt to sort of cover up the idea that maybe they're still around and maybe we didn't kill them all, and maybe the Pancratos sword technique isn't really a fucking end all be all to a whole fucking race.
I mean, I would still
give it time, and maybe people forget about Jigalag. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, maybe they'll even forget about Dre. Worst things have happened. Thank you.
Bravo, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, on the subject of the left-handed elves and the Red Guards, it is something I actually kind of wanted to talk to, because we know that it was something I did want to bring up as like just kind of little side note about all this disease stuff is within the context of the Red Guards and the left-handed elves, we know that elves in general, or at least the Altmer, are very much prone to being infected by diseases. And this is usually seen as they've sort of traded their ability for magicka and magic for being very vulnerable to disease. Like you cough on them, they get sick for like years kind of thing. Now, a part of me is wondering if maybe the Red Guards kind of did something like that back in the day, an early kind of biological warfare, perhaps. Because, I mean, we reproduce faster than them. If we just make them sick, we don't have to fight them all, considering they're, as we openly admit, technologically superior until the point where we literally required a god hero of mankind to bring us orichalc weapons so we could fight them on equal standing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like there is a lot that we don't know about it. And on a separate note, I would challenge the notion that left-handed elves are still there, because I got an interesting kind of it was basically a Facebook from MK when I pointed out in one of the old groups that in Dharmic theory there's two ways. There's the left-handed path and the right-handed path, meaning orthodox and unorthodox, basically.
Yeah.
Left-handed being the unorthodox path. Specifically in Hinduism, this is Vamachara, I believe. And that's seen as like oh no, I shouldn't do that, but there are some people who do it anyway. And seeing as how there's been a lot of dharmic influence on the Elder Scrolls world, especially because of people like MK, I thought, hey, wait a second, maybe this is how we should sort of think about the left-handed elf sometimes. And when you see that big fat Michael Kirkbride like this, it's kind of like getting a big thumbs up from God, right?
Yeah,
so,
yeah. You kind of go, all right, maybe I should think about this more seriously. Yeah, and that's the way he explained it to me was the idea that the left-handed elves were called left-handed not necessarily because they were literally left-handed, but because it was a not like us. It was a Aedra versus Daedra. It was this is us, we're right-handed, not like us, left-handed, sinister. The sinister elves, Yeah. Since sinister means left-handed, or
and that's also why I make the argument that the left-handed elves were not all elves.
Right. Yeah, could be.
Conspiracy time.
It's it. Well, I mean, also Kirkbride and Kuhlman were also kind of the mind that the original character creation system for Morrowind had you select a race, but then to determine your abilities, you selected a culture. Yeah. So the race determined the way you look, but then the bonuses you got to stats and everything like that were culturally based, not, whatever.
Okay.
Which, I mean, can you imagine? That would have changed our conversation.
Would have been nice.
I'm a black man from Argonia.
It would be brilliant. It would be brilliant. But...
Yeah, it would be really interesting.
That would have been fun.
Anyway, shall we talk about Corpus for a bit?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Should. Oh, right.
Right.
Sorry. One thing before we talk about Corpus, just another quick little thing about disease. And I forgot to ask it earlier when it was more relevant. Can we consider lycanthropy and vampirism to be diseases?
Okay. All right. So I really like the idea of vampirism and lycanthropy being diseases. I like them. I like that idea because I like it. It does explain why pretty much any race can be a vampire. You can have, best of my knowledge, you can have an Argonian vampire. You can have a Khajiit vampire, if you're both furry and goth. And you can do those things because lycanthropy is not restricted to race, and then so classifying it as a curse or a disease or the delta of the two in Elder Scrolls makes a lot of sense. I also like it because it implies that up to a certain point before which the disease has run its course, at least with lycanthropy, I believe, but definitely with vampirism, you can get a cure.
Right. Right.
And and it's sort of it eats away a little bit at the validity of the cultural identity of vampires. I like it because it fits in with the idea of it being Daedric in origin, because Molag Bal created vampires, and
that is true, yeah.
And I think you could probably argue that Hircine, I think, created werewolves.
He's called the father of man beasts. There's actually no there is some sort of story about doing things with a bear that or something that brings him up with as a werewolf, but.
Well, there are werebears in Solstheim.
Yeah, I can't remember whether or not werebears are the kind of the original were creature or not, but that might just be me confusing Hircine's bear aspect with the were beast stuff. But it definitely kind of feels that sort of a way that No, I've lost my train of thought. Sorry, I'm gone.
Mm-hmm. It's like AIDS, HIV. Yeah, Arctic a little bit. Yeah, it basically once it proceeds too far, you're boned. Yeah, and that's kind of actually HIV is the virus, AIDS is the condition. It's a little bit like how COVID is the virus, but what you actually die of is pneumonia. So in the case of anyway, so yeah, so again, we're kind of getting like I'm sort of feeling like this endorsement again in Elder Scrolls lore for diseases as a Daedric, summoning kind of thing.
Did we ever get an explanation as to why we get different vampiric strains? Because in the ordinary world, we'd get virus mutation and so on.
Sure.
But for curses, and particularly given that it was so directly connected to Lamai Bofag, sorry, how you pronounce her surname, at the start. So why would that shift?
Yeah, that's the part I don't get. It's the reason why vampires were able to identify other vampires from other clans. It's because they were infected with a different strain of vampirism.
Yeah.
If you look at it like in terms of mutation, like they're different strains. It's COVID-18 versus COVID-19. It's fine. I don't. I don't really. I don't know, man. I mean, honestly, I think what it comes down to is that, whoever was writing the vampire content for Morrowind was just really into Vampire the Masquerade, I think.
Yeah.
Which I think that was actually something that I remember. I think it was Ted Peterson who was talking about that.
Would have been Tedders, yeah.
Yeah, he.
I think that was in that big celebration of
because I think it had to do with they played the kind of original Elder Scrolls tabletop game where we get all our games from. They started with that, and then they kind of got away from it and started playing Vampire the Masquerade instead. And I remember
as you do in the early 90s. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's just sort of what sort of inspired it. That's obviously, of course, the boring explanation. But the same reason there are various like it. Yeah, I know, Doc, but because it's cool isn't really a lore. You got to lore it. So I would probably I don't know if you bend my arm behind my back and told me I had to decide on something, I would say that I like the idea of it being like a mutation or a strain of the same virus. But that also sort of implies that there could be additional strains of the lycanthropy or the vampiric viruses as well, which could be polyphoric vampirism.
We do have an example of that in the lore. There's actually a vampire who's creating her own strain. She's doing literal experiments to make a perfected strain to create another disease to inflict on vampires.
Okay.
To change what they are, to get back to kind of the original stuff. So there's possibly some way of modifying the strain, and that implies that you can naturally change stuff as well. So I don't know, unless conspiracy theory, the different strains of vampirism are periite corrupting things because of natural order and stuff. So yeah, I'm thinking just kind of something natural order, something periite is trying to alter the purview of other Daedric Princes as an Oblivion power play.
Does periite make diseases or just collect them? That's a really good question, Arctic.
Also, I think there's something in the lore about Clavicus Vile owns a strain of vampirism or something like that.
He keeps it in a little jar on his shelf.
They still acknowledge Baal as their creator, but they've changed over who their patron is. So it's more
I
like
think that's
schism
the
than anything else.
the Cyrodiilic Vampirum Order, I think.
Yeah.
Right, yes.
Because it would be very awkward to explain why you're a vampire and also worshiping Molag Bal, despite the fact that you're also fighting him.
Yeah,
I
did have people try to tell me one time that all the different strains were brought about because those groups worship different deities.
Okay.
Okay, I like that.
Ideology.
Possible.
I mean, I guess it's plausible, but I don't really buy it personally.
So let's talk about Corpus.
Yeah, Corpus.
So of these diseases in general, Corpus is different.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why Corpus is different is because Corpus, unlike other diseases which are there to make you sick and or kill you, Corpus does not kill you.
Oh.
Corpus is the if you consider it a disease and it is airborne, it's the extension of the house of Dagoth.
The house of me.
Yeah. And in that respect, it is an involuntary infection of a person's soul by another person's soul. And that's kind of what makes the Corpus disease interesting is, first off, by the way it's transmitted, which is not entirely clear. It seems to be transmitted airborne, much like the Blight, but that's never really definitively proven one way or the other. You catch it because you kill Dagoth Gares.
Yeah.
Or the Hortator does, excuse me. And then, or to say, then the Reverend does. And then there are people in the game who are in sleepers who have been infected by it, but have not reached the stage in which they turn into a Corpus monster. And the stages of infection of the Corpus disease, as monitored by Divith Fear, are effectively what he seems to imply is that he doesn't really speak specifically about how infection happens, but he says that it begins that the first sign of infection is that you begin to experience dreams of Dagoth.
Yep.
And that sort of implies to me, and I like this idea, that the disease infects you through dreams, through subconscious thought. So that a person can be infected with Corpus and by conceptually, by just having the kind of belief system that might match somewhat Dagoth's personality, or just having a predisposition to minimizing your ego, or in some cases, your next door neighbor, who's an absolute motherfucker, slipped a sixth house sigil underneath your bed, and that's what's giving you the dreams, is because somebody's purposefully infected you by giving you a sixth house what you call it?
Statue.
Yeah, they call them specifically. It's a
ash statue.
Yeah, ash statue. There you go.
Yeah, there are different takes on that actually, because the public dungeon, one of the public dungeons in Vardenfell is Cogrune, and you go through that, and the person that you're sent to find has basically become part of the sixth house because of who she is. It kind of plays along with the whole kind of the narrative of Poison Song, that certain people who were part of House Dagoth can be kind of reactivated, if you like.
Yeah. That was kind of what I saw. That Corpus is almost I don't know how to describe it. It's almost like a key that unlocks this this bloodline that you have, and if you don't have the bloodline, then you turn into this beast.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I think in the original documents, the concept art that MK did, it shows that that ash creatures, they're getting closer and closer to divinity, and that's why their heads are bursting open, and I think he calls it the star wound in the face,
the void of the
and so I mean, I always kind of assumed that it diverges in those two paths. Either you're a beast or you become an ash creature, which can, it goes through its stages until you become an ascended sleeper. I think that's kind of the apex. You can go from ash slave to ash ghoul to ash poet to ash.
Isn't there also ash vampire in there somewhere?
Ash vampires, those are specifically Dagoth's. I mean, he calls them his kin. So they're specifically, I assume, based on dialogue and descriptions and everything, I assume that the ash vampires are members of House Dagoth when it was alive, that were brought back by Dagoth, and so they were like his generals, maybe. And so they're his highest. So that's why they have the third eye that's closed in their foreheads.
Yeah, because they're about to awaken, but they haven't.
Yeah.
On the subject of Corpus, though, and I do really like what we've talked about so far and how it can be spread in a very different way because it is a very different disease. At the same time, we also see quite clearly what is an attempt at quarantine, the ghost fence. So in that sense, it also kind of spreads, or at least is being responded to in the means of a typical disease. So, hey, we got to build this ghost fence to prevent the blight and other diseases and all the ash vampires from roaming around the ashlands and hitting cities like Ald'ruhn and Caldera.
I don't think the ghost fence was actually erected to keep diseases.
I know that wasn't its sole purpose, but I'm just saying that it's also part of its function.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, because it seems like it was supposed to keep blighted creatures.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But when you've got Jesus Christ, when you've got cliff racers that can fly over it, they've got blight. I mean,
right. Well, it's not there to stop the blight. It's there to stop Corpus.
Corpus to contain Dagoth. It's there to contain
exactly.
Dagoth.
Yeah. So it's containing, like you said, it's containing the monsters inside of Red Mountain, but even the tribunal are conscious that sooner or later they're going to spill out. And it's
it's kind of a testament to the tribunal's failing power, I think, because it's
that they built a wall.
Well, yeah, I mean and it has to be powered by souls, and so they can't use their own divine abilities to keep the actual barrier active. It requires the souls, and even then, it's just not effective. It's I mean, I think that's they're trying so hard, and just nothing they do is working. Because Dagoth is growing stronger and they're growing weaker.
They're fighting change. That's
back.
Yeah. It's Christ. It's one of the things that it's one of the interesting things about Dagoth, one of the many interesting things about Dagoth that
talking about Morrowind and Dagoth again. Check that on
that he's spreading, that he's distributing a type of enlightenment. The battle between Dagoth's metaphysics and Vivek's is very interesting. The way that both of them were inspired by the same entity, Lorcan, but because Dagoth either interpreted it incorrectly or received it incorrectly or was wrong place, wrong time, whatever. Dagoth got a very different opinion than Vivek did about the nature of reality and about his own nature. And the end result is you get like this really different kind of conflict where it's like two different people reading the same textbook and getting two completely different results. You know, they or the same work of fiction or whatever. They you know, Dagoth Ur read it and said, "Oh, I get it. Everything is me, and I'm going to become, and I'm going to spread myself, and everything will eventually become me." And then Vivek reads it and goes, "Oh, I get it. Everything is already me, and I am also everything else, and it's already happened, and I just haven't seen it yet." And that's it, yeah. And then their approach then varies completely, because as with any good bad guy, Dagoth Ur's convinced that he's doing the right thing. And frankly, to be an easier pitch, honestly, if Corpus turned you into this 8-foot-tall, fabulous golden god, you know. But instead, it turns you into a zombie, and that's hard to pitch. Marketing's going to have a hard time with that. You know,
the zombies thing almost strikes me as something that's it's an inherent clash with what the heart is and what Mundus is, if I can just get my thoughts right. That it's almost the it's part of the original Arbis, or at least another subgradient kind of leaking into Mundus. And because Mundus isn't built to contain that sort of stuff, that it starts to grow and leak and burst out. If you like, it will warp whatever is containing it, because it's not because mortal hardware isn't meant to handle that.
Well, it's a tentacle flute, Doc. You know, yeah, you can play it.
Yeah, which is interesting, given Dagoth Ur's association with music. I'm older than music. And also, I mean, personally, I think the Ascended Sleepers look an awful lot like the Sleepers of Hermaeus Mora. The Sleepers, the Seekers. And so, given Hermaeus Mora's connection to possibly the entire Arbus and how music plays into that, I don't know. It's there's a connection there somewhere.
Yeah. And it's, and also that, you know, Dagoth Ur has such a strong relationship with the, does Dagoth Ur develop his fascination with music because of his association with the Dwemer, or because of his association with Lorcan? And if it's because of his association with Lorcan, did the Dwemer develop tonal architecture because of their association with the heart?
I thought it also had to do with the Charman playing his own tune.
I got the impression that the Dwemer developed tonal architecture explicitly to mess with the heart. It was just, we've got this thing, how do we use it?
I say porque no los dos.
Okay, yeah.
So.
Right. Yeah. And, yeah, I mean, the fact that Corpus is sort of a disease generated not by Daedra classifies it as something that we haven't seen before or since in the Elder Scrolls universe. So it's an interesting, it's very interesting, but there's a whole game about it. You should probably go play it because yesterday was the 18th anniversary of Morrowind.
Yes.
So as somebody put it on True STL, Fargoth is legal now, kids. You don't have to feel guilty for fapping to pictures of Fargoth anymore.
I think you and I are about to become very
close friends. Yeah. So anyway, anything else we want to talk about, or have we kind of ground to a halt?
I don't think
covered it, because I wanted to talk about disease within the meta commentary of the dream / the arbor / existence, which we covered with Dagoth Ur. So there we go.
I mean, we really didn't talk about Periite as such a whole lot.
Well, didn't we do a cast for Periite?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Was LJ there?
Oh, no,
pretty sure LJ was on it.
Okay, then we're probably fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We talked about Periite when it was relevant.
Because I don't think we've done all the princes.
No, we haven't.
No.
Yeah.
No.
We just did a few.
We also haven't done all the gods. Like we did the 8 or 9 main divines, but we haven't done like the extras like Cirabane, Ifray, Fine Aster, No, I think there was a Magnus cast somewhere, but like
Should probably do a Humding cast if we have.
There was an observer cast, which I mean that was a lot of Magnus talking there.
Yeah.
Magnus looks at you through his giant hole. He judges thee.
Okay. Yeah, we should probably do a Humding cast at some point. So that'd be smart. And there isn't a Hermes Mora cast, and I am riding. Well, don't do that. Jesus.
Okay.
All right.
Could probably get one done. I suppose we could start rattling off Daedra. Do we have another thing that we want to do?
Daedra or like extra Etata gods? Like, do we want to just
I mean,
merge them all together?
we could just do like an all-encompassing. Hey, let's do all these gods that really we don't have a whole lot of information for.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get a list of them and then
Yeah.
We'll
I think
discuss.
we probably need to do the Daedra that haven't already been covered first. But
Yeah.
yeah.
That's fine. Oh, yeah. Okay. So we'll get to work on that, and we'll see everybody else in chat later.
Which means that next time will be, if we're going to do our traditional thing, or the alphabetical thing, then are we starting with Azura?
Oh God, like there's no content on Azura. Nobody knows anything about her.
Before we go, the Telmore Independent Press is back in production.
Yay!
So, there was a weird, like I swear it was November, and all of a sudden it's April. Weird Dragon Break issue.
Exactly. 1,008 years happened like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, I'm just gonna continue from maybe June onwards to go through May and put it together, and then we'll.
Okay.
I've commissioned some artwork for the cover, so that should be cool.
Terrific.
Yeah.
And,
my dog wants to go for a walk. And
I was about to say.
Yeah, so I gotta go.
The dog's like, I heard you say bye. Let's go.
Yeah.
Anybody else got anything?
Do you want to go for a walk?
Not just the obligatory Selectives Lorecast is actually a podcast now.
Yep, we're big boys now. Yep.
It is out on most podcatchers at this point.
Yep. Find us wherever it is that you find your other podcasts.
Yes.
I mean,
and
you guys are on that podcast. It's still not at episode 25 yet.
Yeah. And Doc is saying, don't forget to join the Selectives Discord. Well.
Oh yes, we never plug our Discord. Yeah, by all means.
Yeah.
There it is.
Plug the Discord now, then. Yeah. Get that
Don't wash your face. Don't touch your hands. Something. All right. Yeah. All right. Bye.
Spoken like a true American.
Yeah, you got it damn right.
Buddy.